Hello and welcome to Just a Moment. I'm Royden. Today I'd like to spend a few quiet moments reflecting on a simple but very challenging thought. More of him and less of me. These words sound beautiful when we hear the spoken word. But when we really stop and think, they touch something very deep inside of all of us. Because most of our lives we are spending trying to protect ourselves, promote ourselves, prove ourselves, or hold onto control. Yet the Christian journey teaches us something different. It teaches us that peace is not found in becoming greater ourselves, but in allowing Christ to become greater within us. There's a beautiful verse in the Gospel of John where John the Baptist says about Jesus, "He must increase, I must decrease." John 3:30. These are powerful words. John understood something that many of us struggle to understand. Life is not really about building our own importance. It is about making room for God. And perhaps that is one of the hardest things for us to do, because naturally we want our opinions to win. We want recognition, we want to be understood, we want things our way. Even in our faith, sometimes realizing it, life can still be centered around ourselves rather than centered around God. But Jesus continually pointed toward another way, not a life built on pride, but humility. Not a life built on self-promotion, but surrender. Not weakness, but trust. And surrender. Surrender is difficult. We often think surrender means losing something, but spiritually surrender is actually where freedom begins. Because the more we cling tightly to ourselves, the more anxious and restless we often become. We carry burdens we were never meant to carry. We try to control outcomes we cannot control. We try to hold on together a life that sometimes feels fragile. Yet Jesus says, "Come to me, all of you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest." Matthew 11:28. Notice he doesn't say, "Fix yourself." He simply says, "First, come." An invitation. This is the heart of Christianity. Not perfection, not performance, but relationship. And maybe less of me really means learning to let go the constant need to carry everything alone. Maybe it means allowing God into the places we normally keep guarded, our fears, our disappointments, our hidden struggles, even our pride. Because God cannot fill hands that refuse to open. Sometimes we ask God for peace while still holding tightly onto anger. We ask for direction while refusing to trust Him. We ask for healing while still living in bitterness. But little by little, God works within us, quietly, patiently, not always through dramatic moments, but often through ordinary life, through prayer, through silence, and through suffering, through kindness, even through failure, especially failure. Because failure has a way of reminding us that we are not self-sufficient. And perhaps some of the deepest spiritual growth comes when we finally stop pretending we have everything together. The Apostle Paul once prayed for a struggle in his life to be removed, but instead God answered him with these words: "My grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness." 2 Corinthians 12:9. That changes the way we look at weakness. The world tells us to hide weakness. God often works through it. Because when we are weak enough to lean on Him, we discover strength that does not come from ourselves. More of Him and less of me does not mean we lose our identity. It means we slowly become the person God created us to be. More compassionate, more patient, more forgiving, more peaceful. Not perfect, but changing. And that change usually happens quietly. Sometimes so quietly we hardly notice it ourselves. A softer response where once there was anger. A willingness to listen instead of argue. A little more grace towards others. A little less judgmental. That is God's work. The truth is, the world tells us constantly to focus on ourselves. Protect yourself. Promote yourselves. Put yourself first. But Jesus shows us another way. A way of love. A way of humility. A way of trust. And strangely, when we stop making life completely about ourselves, we often discover a deeper joy than we ever expected, because the soul was never designed to live separated from God. St. Augustine said, "Our hearts are restless until they rest in you." And perhaps that rest only comes when we finally say, "Lord, less of my pride, less of my fear, less of my need to control everything, and more of you. More of your peace, more of your wisdom, more of your love within me. Not just on Sunday, not just in prayer, but in the ordinary moments of life. How we speak, how we forgive, how we treat people, how we carry ourselves through difficult times. Because faith is not only something we believe, it becomes something we slowly live. And maybe today, that is enough for us to simply reflect upon. Not becoming more important, not becoming more noticed, but becoming more open to God. More of Him and less of me. If these reflections are meaningful to you, I'd appreciate you liking and subscribing to my channel. And even if they are helping one person pause, reflect, or feel a little closer to God, then they are worth continuing. Thank you for spending these moments with me today. Until next time, I'm Royden. And just a moment. Sometimes the quietest surrender to God becomes the beginning of the deepest peace. Peace be with you.